ReZero, Side Story, The World Petra Saw Part 1.
For Petra Lete, the world seemed very small and complete. Petra was born into the Lete family in the small village of Arlam, in the territory of Margrave Mathers. Petra was neither blessed nor born into a wealthy family. She grew up healthy in a very ordinary village, to a very ordinary family, as one of the very ordinary village girls. The village of Arlam was a typical ordinary and rural village in the world, with nothing to write home about, aside from the fact that the mansion of the Margrave, the lord of the territory, was located near the village. There was nothing remarkable about it. Compared to other places in the territory, there might have been more chances to see their lord in person. It was a terrible thing to ask a young girl to understand such a unique opportunity. The first thing to note is that this lord, Roswell L. Mathers, was a strange man. His appearance did not match that of a typical nobleman. As rumor had it, he liked to wear makeup like the clowns in fairy tales, and his outlandish and strange costumes were more bewildering than awe-inspiring. If the lord didn't do his job properly, the people under him would have a hard time. It was an idea that Petra had vaguely kept in her mind from stories and conversations with adults. And even as a child, Petra knew that her lord was not a normal person. In fact, the attitude of the lord, who occasionally wandered into the village for a visit, was strange. He did not act like a lord, but he messed with the adults, annoyed the golden-haired maid with him by saying things she did not understand, and left nothing but confusion in his wake. Petra couldn't understand how adults such as Mouser laughed and forgave such behavior, and Petra once complained directly to the lord. But, Roswell, oh, Wheel, that's harsh. But you are a very brave girl to tell me that. I hope you will remember that courage and take good care of yourself. For some reason, Roswell patted Petra on the head happily, ignoring her indignant feelings. Since then, Petra had given up on his eccentricities, thinking that it was useless to try and talk to the lord. Having said that, the focus of the story returns from the village and the lord back to Petra. As mentioned before, Petra had lived her life as an ordinary village girl in a village with no distinctive features. In the words of her lord, she could add the crown of a very brave girl to that. As Petra grew up as a village girl, she became aware of something at the same time as she became older. It was apparently a budding sense of self-consciousness that she was a little cuter compared to the other children in the village. In fact, Petra's appearance was more than gorgeous enough, even taking into account her young age. She had large round eyes, light pink lips, long, slender arms and legs, and white skin. Her reddish-brown hair was very fine and flowed softly and gently in the wind. Petra's young but lovely appearance was so that the whole village was convinced that she would become a great beauty in the future. Such self-awareness for a child is not easily trivialized by this. In addition, Petra was not only good-looking, but she was also more intelligent than the other children. However, it was the kind of intelligence that could be called cunning. Petra thought that being born with good looks was the same as being blessed with a divine protection or talent, so it was only natural that she should use her good looks and utilize them to her advantage. When Petra broke something just for fun, when Petra stole a sweet orange from the field, when Petra skipped taking care of the livestock and went out with friends, in the face of angry adults, Petra used her cuteness in a powerful way. If Petra got teary-eyed, looked down, and spoke words of remorse, it would be enough to prevent the adults from strongly scolding her, and they would leave it at that. It was only natural that they would not be able to scold the other children with her. Her parents, who were the only ones in a position to scold Petra without such ties, were completely fooled by their beloved daughter, who acted like a good girl in front of them, and she grew up to be a little devil. With Petra, you could see the good in her eyes. Even as a child, or perhaps because she was a child, she had no hesitation to jump on such advantages. Naturally, the children of the village would often gather around Petra, and as a result, Petra would grow more and more cheeky, doted on by the village boys, relied on by the village girls, and adored by the adults. Petra watered the flower of self-consciousness, and it blossomed. It was around this time that Petra began to mistakenly believe that she was the center of the world. Anyway, children, despite their misunderstandings, are a lovely thing. Petra's growth did not go beyond the realm of being a mischievous child, and her actions with her friends were only minor incidents in a small village. The center of the world, Petra later did not realize her misunderstandings and only learned a little bit about the size of the world until she turned 10, a few years after becoming self-aware. It was a rare occasion when a peddler stopped by the village of Alam to sell silk fabrics and miscellaneous goods. It seemed that the merchant was on his way back from selling a variety of rare textiles to the lord, who liked to wear eccentric costumes. On his way back, he unpacked his goods in the village of Alam along the way. Merchant, Kararagai to the west, Wallachia to the south. And it's all the rage in the royal capital of Lagunica. Petra's world changed when she saw the items the merchant had laid out with his sales pitch. The girl's eyes were drawn to the colorful, brightly woven fabrics, and she was instantly captivated by the fantasy. With her natural charm, she was able to win over the merchant and her parents, acquire some textiles, and sat on her bed in her room and stared at them endlessly. They became her irreplaceable treasures and made her dream of one thing.
ReZero, Side Story, The World Petra Saw Part 2.
As the months passed by, Petra turned 12 years old, still keeping her dream alive. At this age, changes come not only to the mind, but also to the body. Gradually, she prepared to blossom not as a childish girl, but into a woman. Petra, who was still just a budding flower, her prized cuteness still healthy and strong. If anything, it had become polished with self-awareness and poised to become more sophisticated and glamorous. The 12-year-old Petra was still the center of the children in the village and had a reputation among the adults for being cute and smart, but in her room, she puffed out her cheeks in frustration. The reason for this lay in the dream that Petra had. The repercussions of that chance event had grown in Petra's mind with the passage of time. 2 years have passed since then, but her treasure remained carefully stored away, its color unfaded. Her dim longing became concrete, and Petra had a dream in her hands. In the future, I want to go to the royal capital and work as a tailor. She wanted to make pretty and fashionable clothing, decorated with beautiful fabrics as she desired. The admiration for the many textiles that had captured her eyes that day had made Petra dream of such a future. Looking back, maybe the reason Petra did not like the Lord very much was that she did not like the way he dressed. It was terrible. It was blasphemy against clothing, she thought. Aside from her anger at the Lord, Petra's frustration ran even deeper. This was because the people around her were not very supportive of Petra, who was working hard to realize her dream by practicing her sewing. The reaction of the children, especially the ones around her, was really depressing. Sometimes when Petra asked them about the future, she never got the answer she wanted. Lucas would sniff and say he's going to take over his father's job as a lumberjack, and Mild's stomach would growl while thinking about something complicated. The brothers Diane and Cain would never stop fighting over who would marry Petra. When she would say she would be leaving the village, her younger friend, Mina, was adorable, but she would always start crying when Petra would tell her that she would be leaving for the royal capital. Here, Petra was feeling completely alone. The kids around her depended on her, but she had no friends to turn to. Even if she told the adults, they would just laugh as if her dreams were just a fantasy. What a surprise! Being cute was so lonely. This was an unbelievable reality for Petra, who had always been able to get by on cuteness alone. This was the first time Petra had experienced the frustration of a situation that could not be managed with cuteness. As a result, Petra spent her days in agony, with dreams and worries in her heart. In the future, when I grow up a little more and become prettier, it will all be solved. For the time being, I'm pinning all my hopes on my future self. At such a troubled age, the 12-year-old Petra once again experienced a strange encounter one day. She was on her way to a nearby riverbank to go crawfish fishing with all her friends. Petra, who didn't want to get her clothes dirty, could only watch the fishing, but it was still fun to hang out with her friends. She was worried about her future, but that was a different matter. Hey there, kids. You know where the person in charge of the village is? Then, in a very familiar manner, a black-haired boy spoke to her. He had mean-looking eyes and an incongruous face. He was a man who wore very formal clothes that did not suit him at all. His face was overshadowed by his clothes. However, thanks to his ill-fitting appearance, Petra was soon able to surmise the identity of the person she was dealing with. Petra, oh, are you the new servant in the Lord's mansion? Servant, oh, you're right. As expected of Petra. So smart. So cute. The best in the village. Petra, did I mention my name? Servant, uck. The boy clapped his hands excitedly and groaned at the staring Petra. Petra's guard went up when she suddenly heard someone call her by name, even though the person was a stranger. There was also the feeling of resentment at being startled by his words. How in the world did he know her name? Servant, oh, look, there she is, there she is. The most beautiful girl in the village. Speaking of Petra of the village of Alam, her brave name is echoing high and low, even in Roswell Summers' mansion. See, Petra, oh. In the Lord's mansion? Oh no, I'm so embarrassed. Servant, it's true, it's true. Rather, it's inevitable. Oh no, the real thing is 100 times cuter than the stories, ha. The boy, who was in a panic, was frankly relieved to see Petra looking down with her hands on her cheeks. Petra pretended to be embarrassed by the boy, and was looking carefully for his reaction. One should not trust someone easily just because their clothes look like they are related to the mansion. There was a man who used to come in and out of the Lord's mansion and who used to stare at Petra and the others. He had a handsome face, and his clothes suited him, but his stare was unsettling, and if one looked closely, one could see that that person and this boy were wearing the same clothes. Petra was surprised to see how different they looked depending on who was wearing the clothes, but one could never be too careful. Being cute could also be dangerous. Servant, my name is Natsuki Subaru. Long story short, I'm an apprentice butler. I'm a hard worker who's been taking care of Roswell Summers' mansion since yesterday. I hope we can all get along. Unaware of Petra's suspicions, the boy Subaru boisterously introduced himself. His greetings lacked the composure of an adult, and his behavior was not polite. There was a sense that he was looking down on the children. Also, the way he closed the distance between them irritated Petra. To put it simply, Petra had the worst impression of Subaru when she first met him. However, Lucas and Mild, who were confused at first, quickly became friends with him, perhaps because they liked his attitude, which was neither adult-like nor childlike. If that happened, Petra, who represented the children, would have to accept him. Petra, so, you're looking for the person in charge of the village? What do you want with them? Subaru, well, I've been asked by my maid senpai to deliver something to them. So, I guess I'm running an errand. Petra, All right, I'll take you to Mouser. With Lucas on his back and Mild and Dine hooked around his waist, Petra guided Subaru with a forced smile. Petra thought that it was also a bit of a ploy, that he was not angered by the mischief. Incidentally, the one in charge of the village was actually Mayor Mila, but she was deliberately avoided, with Subaru taken to her younger brother, Ratham-san, Mouser, who looked more like a village chief. Petra was sure the people at the mansion would scold her later for this. It would be interesting. The next day, the village was abuzz with rumors about the new servant who had joined the mansion. It was a small village. Although there were no major incidents, even the slightest thing could easily become known. In particular, people from the Lord's mansion would frequently come to the village to buy groceries. It was only natural that rumors would start to circulate about the kind of person that one would be meeting many times in the future. Petra, I'm not sure. But, he doesn't seem like a bad person. When asked by her parents, Petra casually replied with a safe answer. After the incident with the escort yesterday, there were quite a few people who came to Petra, who had met with Subaru, to find out the truth about the rumors. The other children were also asked, but Petra was still the one that the adults relied on. Petra didn't have a very good impression of Subaru, but it was not good to say anything different from the other kids. It was hard to keep the cute and cuddly wheels on track. Petra breathed deeply, having gotten through the barrage of questions. Petra, huh? Who is that girl? After escaping from the circle of adults to the outskirts of the village, Petra's eyes widened. There, she discovered a girl with light brown braided hair. For 2 days in a row, she had seen this unfamiliar girl. Petra, what are you doing out here all alone? Girl, oh, unlike the previous days, Petra had no hesitation in calling out to the girl. The girl who turned around at her call was quite cute even from Petra's point of view. Her clothes were simple, and her hair was unadorned, but the quality of her face was quite outstanding. Petra was filled with an overwhelming desire to do something about her appearance. Having worked tirelessly to improve her own cuteness, Petra was also keenly attuned to the cuteness of others. She especially disliked seeing cuteness go to waste, and she took care of her mother and Mina in many ways in that regard. She had a tremendous desire to pour her own cute spirit onto this little girl. I'm Meili. Because of some circumstances, my family is sending me to this village for a little while. The girl who said her name and smiled Meili was a quiet girl. She was quick to answer questions, but did not often talk to people on her own. She had a personality similar to Mina's, which made Petra feel like she had to lead the way like an older sister. Petra, come on. Let me introduce you to everyone. I'm Petra. I'll be your friend. As soon as Petra took the shy Meili with her, Lucas and her friends immediately welcomed her. As children, once they got to know each other, it was easy for them to talk. She quickly became one of the friends of Petra and the others, and that day they ran around the village to deepen their friendship. Lucas, hey, come look, this animal looks like it's a girl. Mina, oh, wow, that's amazing. Meili, it feels like you can talk to animals. In the midst of all this playfulness, Petra and her friends were especially pleased with the puppy that Meili had taken in. The dark brown-haired puppy seemed to have been brought by Meili and was very friendly. The children were completely enticed by the way it performed tricks, as if it could understand Meili's words. Petra, Meili. We'll definitely play again tomorrow. At dusk, as they parted, Petra grabbed Meili's hand and promised to see her tomorrow. She nodded shyly, and Petra went home, satisfied. Petra, today, I made a new friend. She was all alone, so I invited her to play. When Petra reflected on her day at the dinner table, her parents looked at her with admiration and praised her. This also helped to boost Petra's self-esteem. It was true that Meili was a good girl, but it was Petra who had reached out to her. Not only was she cute, but she was also kind. This felt like it would bring the royal capital closer. Petra went to sleep feeling good, with a little bit of selfishness swelling her heart. The next day, Petra woke up as usual, and went out to play as usual, an ordinary day unaware that fate always masquerades as such. Petra, sorry to keep you waiting. What are you going to do today? At the height of the fire time, Petra met up with Lucas and his friends at noon, and then met up with Meili at the edge of town. As they were all talking about what they were going to do today, Lucas and friends, oh. It's Subaru, huh? Subaru, yay. Subaru is here. Lucas's face lit up, and he and the others started running at once. Then, standing in their path was Subaru, whose uniform did not suit him. He was surprised by their momentum. Subaru, whoa. Hey. Bring it. He opened his arms and tried to catch them, but he couldn't stop them at all. Lucas and Mild, and the brothers Diane and Kane, collided with them, and Subaru and the kids fell to the ground without a moment's hesitation. Petra, geez. Guys, don't do anything dumb. Subaru, are you okay? Subaru, oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I was overconfident in my abilities. How embarrassing. When Petra called out to Subaru, who had fallen on his butt, he laughed and scratched his head. Petra tilted her head at Subaru's appearance and asked, huh? It was the first time she had seen him in 2 days, but the impression she got from him was quite different compared to that time. At that time, he looked like a fool who had no time to spare. Petra, Subaru, did something happen yesterday? Subaru, what? No, nothing at all. It's not like I borrowed the lap of the girl I have feelings for, cried my eyes out, and then went to sleep with a runny nose. Nothing like that happened at all. Petra, Petra was told to deny what she had not asked about. At any rate, it seemed that he did not fall asleep in someone's lap, crying and sniffling. Though, there might have been something similar to that had happened. Petra, well, okay, compared to the Subaru of the day before yesterday, the Subaru of today was more likable to Petra. She did not know how Lucas and the others felt, but Petra felt like she should try to be a little more friendly with him. Petra, so, are you running errands today? Subaru, that's part of it, but right now I have free time. Why don't we take a little tour of the village? Hey, don't get on my back. Don't get snot on my back. Even if it's not snot, that still wouldn't be okay. Petra, do you need help, Subaru, please? Petra felt a little bit sorry for Subaru, who was dragging the clinging Lucas and the others along with him. While accompanying him on his tour of the village, Petra somehow managed to introduce him to the adults in the village. Ratham-san, who was called Mausa. Mila-san, the real village chief. Meikitsi-san, who organized the young people of the village and sometimes wore a mask. And so, while Petra was helping Subaru introduce himself around, Subaru, well, in this case, I guess it's a good idea to gather the people of the village and have a chat with them so that I can get a better idea of things. Petra, all at once, Subaru, I'm going to give them a big old hello and say, let's be friends from now on. Then Subaru laughed with the face of a mischievous little boy. Seeing that innocent smile, Petra took a liking to Subaru for the first time.
ReZero, Side Story, The World Petra Saw Part 3.
Subaru, victory, villagers, victory. The good impression Petra had of Subaru was almost overshadowed by an unfamiliar dance. The radio calisthenics drew in many people in the village. However, it greatly embarrassed the adolescent Petra. And yet, once again, Lucas and his friends loved it, and it spread to the adults as well. The offsetting favoritism worsened, and Petra began to dislike Subaru more and more. Dislike may be an overstatement. But Petra hated it as she was not good at it, and her clothes did not match the situation. Petra, you're the only one who understands how I feel. Petting the head of the puppy that Meili was holding to her chest, Petra tried to understand with a fleeting smile. On the way home after the dance, she caught Subaru and brought him to see the puppy, and to her surprise, the puppy gobbled up Subaru's hand. Petra, who had been disappointed by everyone's acceptance of Subaru, felt that she had finally found a friend. Petra wanted to ask Meili to sleep over with her tonight. This was because Petra was having feelings for the puppy that she would bring. ? Oh, it was Kane or Mina who exclaimed in surprise. It might even have been Petra herself. Suddenly, the puppy twisted around, slipped through Meili's arms, and ran off. Everyone rushed after it, but it was impossible to catch up with the puppy. The puppy dove through the white fence on the outskirts of the village and ran into the forest. Kids, what should we do? The puppy entered a forest on the opposite side of the road from where they usually played into the forest that the adults had warned them not to enter. This was a place where the power of magic stones was used to create a barrier to keep dangerous creatures away. In other words, it was a dangerous forest. If a small puppy were to enter such a place, kids, Petra, the anxious children's eyes focused on the confused Petra. Petra was the center of the children. Whenever something happened, they turned to her first. And when they did, it was Petra's duty to live up to their trust. Petra, Meili. Petra was asked to do something, but she couldn't say anything. In place of Petra, it was Meili who tried to go under the white fence. Meili stiffened her cheeks in nervousness, but she looked straight at the forest. Meili, I've got to go get her. Petra was shocked as if struck by lightning at the sound of Meili's voice, which Petra felt responsible for, and she felt ashamed of herself for trying to stop her when Meili was so desperate. Petra, magic stones for the barrier were hung on trees at equal intervals to separate the forest from the village. After confirming the location of the magic stones, Petra drew a map in her mind and wrote down evenly spaced boundaries on it, deriving an area where she could safely search for the puppy. If one entered a dangerous forest and was attacked by something, one could escape to a ward. Following this route, they could look for the puppy safely. Petra, I'm going into the woods with Meili. You guys, kids, not so fast. Petra's going, right? I'm going to die out there? Petra linked her hands together with Meili's, then Mina's, then Lucas's, and so on. No one was scared to turn back. Petra, yeah. Thanks. Petra had always been relied upon by everyone. But at this moment, for the first time, Petra felt like she could be the one to rely on everyone. She might not have had the courage to do it alone with Meili, but, Petra, let's not lock our hands together, it makes it hard to walk, okay? Following the map she had drawn in her mind, Petra led everyone through the forest. Petra, stepping on branches and leaves, Petra's heart was beating noisily in her chest as she made her way through the forest. The dusk was approaching, and the visibility in the forest was getting worse. What if I take a wrong turn, or miss something? Anxiety and tension made Petra's forehead sweat. An hour had passed since they had entered the forest. Even now, Petra regretted her lack of preparation. Food to attract the puppy? No, dangerous animals might come. Calling out loud, that was also dangerous. Notifying the adults? They should have done that, even if they were afraid that they would have gotten angry. Bringing a crystal light? Would it have been enough to turn back before it got dark? Petra, in order not to lose their way, they scratched the trees with rocks that they had picked up, but it was only a small comfort. Little by little, the expressions on Petra's friends' faces became more and more anxious. If one person broke down, it would spread all at once. The first person to do so might have been Petra. Petra remembered the location of the barrier. But would she really be able to escape in time after they found the puppy? Maybe she was doing something terrible right now. Her anxiety was growing bigger and bigger, and tears were beginning to form in Petra's eyes. After 2 or 3 more deep breaths, she would tell the others to go back. She would tell them to leave it to the adults, and then, Petra, everyone. We should go, Meili, I agree. It seems that the time is right. Petra, huh? Closing her eyes tightly, she was about to tell everyone to go back when she heard a voice. It was a voice that she had heard before, but it was filled with a tone of voice that she had never heard. When Petra opened her eyes to see what was going on, she saw Meili's face right in front of her. The frightened and unsure girl, her expression was different, with a mature gleam. It was no longer cute, and it had a creepy beauty to it that sent shivers down Petra's spine. Meili, I'm sorry, everyone. But this is my task. Just as she thought she saw a smile and heard a voice, Petra's consciousness was snatched away by a presence behind her. She hurriedly turned around. There was a huge, black dog. Petra heard it growl. She tried to scream, run, but she couldn't speak. Petra's consciousness was cut off there.
ReZero, Side Story, The World Petra Saw Part 4.
Petra's consciousness did not return until the evening of the following day. Petra, all she does is worry me. Slowly, Petra opened her eyes while lying in bed, and the first thing she saw was her mother holding her with a bright red face. Recognizing the sound of her mother's voice, her father immediately rushed into the room as well. Then he hugged Petra and her mother at the same time and started to cry loudly. Father, the people of the mansion rescued you guys when you went into the forest. Subaru-sama, in particular, had a tough time, but he brought everyone back. This was what her parents told Petra, whose eyes were blank as she tried to figure out what had happened. It seemed that the puppy was a dangerous animal that lived in the forest, a witch beast, and Petra and her friends had been in real danger. Surprisingly, it was Subaru and a maid from the mansion who had saved Petra and the others from danger. Petra, come to think of it, that might have happened. Listening to the story, Petra traced a vague memory. It was a very painful memory. It was hard to breathe, and her body was hot. Petra was lying on the grass, surrounded by Lucas and Mina. Then, Subaru and someone else arrived. And, when Subaru talked to her, she asked about Meili, who was not there. Petra, yeah, that's right. Where's Meili? What happened to her? Father, the girl was brought back by Subaru-sama. Soon after, her worried family came to pick her up. So everything is all right, Petra. Petra, I see. Petra's parents told her that Meili and her family had left the village of Alam after saying goodbye. Petra somehow knew that this was a lie. Petra remembered that just before it all had happened, Meili turned into a completely different person. If that puppy was a witch beast, then there must have been something wrong with Meili when she had first brought it here. Even so, Petra wanted to exchange words with Meili once more if possible. But, kids, Petra, you're up. Petra, you're awake. Wake up, Petra. Without allowing Petra to get any sentimentality, her friends came noisily stomping into the house. Lucas and his friends woke up earlier than Petra, and it seemed that they received the same explanation as Petra. Moreover, they honestly believed the story and were sorry to hear that Meili had left. Mina, Why don't we go to the mansion to visit Subaru? It was Mina, who was usually not very assertive, who suggested this. Lucas and the others agreed to her proposal with all hands on deck. Petra agreed with the idea, but she thought it was unusual. Petra, it's unusual for you to say something like that. Mina, because if it weren't for Subaru, I might never have met my brother or sister. Petra knew that Mina's mother was pregnant. As an only child, Petra was a little envious, and when she learned that she was going to have a younger sibling, Mina would become an older sister. Petra understood Mina, and that certainly made Petra want to thank Subaru. Petra, well, let's all go ask the lord of the mansion. Even Petra, as expected, was grateful to Subaru for saving her life. The strange dancing had taken a toll on his likability, but that could be made up for. From now on, I'll be a little kinder to him. I'm very understanding. A visit for Barusu? He is surely still asleep. Oh well. The only person who would be embarrassed to be seen with a dumb sleeping face would be Barusu, so that's fine. Come, follow. Petra was nervous about visiting the mansion, but the pink-haired maid who answered her call was surprisingly kind. Her expression and voice were cold, but Petra could somehow see that it was not because she was distant, but because she was like that to everyone. Petra, don't you have to tell the lord first? Maid, the mansion's miscellaneous affairs are left to us. Unless, of course, you are an assassin who has come to take the life of Barusu. Are you assassins? Petra, there's never been a cuter assassin. Maid, right? So then, it's okay. The maid did not deny that she was cute, and she guided Petra and the others with a prim face. The 6 of them were brought to a room with a magnificent door. They were nervous about going up to the mansion for the very first time. Subaru must have been lying in that room. It was already evening, but he must have been a sleepyhead. Maid, we're coming in. After knocking and making sure there was no answer, the maid opened the door. There was a spacious room with a very large bed in the back. When she found a young man with black hair lying there, Petra entered the room with a sense of relief. Petra, Subaru, isn't it already evening? You shouldn't be sleeping this late. Petra's face and throat froze as she tried to smile and speak to him. Petra, with a peaceful face, Subaru was sleeping, breathing gently. If one excluded his face, he might have just been a sleepyhead. But Subaru's sleeping body was covered in scars and bandages, with white scars here and there. Petra understood that all of them were the marks of the beast's fangs and claws. Maid, keep quiet, so as not to wake him. Call out when you are finished. After saying this, the maid went out into the hallway. After the maid's words, Lucas and the others anxiously walked up to Subaru's side, but Petra was unable to move. Petra couldn't move an inch, and at the same time, everything that had happened to her came flooding back. Petra, while she was suffering in the forest, Petra had asked Subaru to do something for her. It was not just something. She had asked him to bring back the missing Meili. Her father told her that Subaru had brought back Meili. He said he brought all the children back, and was a little injured and had had a hard time. How was this a little bit of an injury? Petra, it's my fault. It's all my fault. Petra brought Meili into the fold. She also loved the puppy that Meili had brought with her and let it run away into the forest. Petra took everyone into the forest where they weren't supposed to go. They should have turned back, but she couldn't bring herself to make that decision. Even in a daze, she asked Subaru to do something so reckless. As a result of his recklessness, she also inflicted indelible scars on Subaru. Everything had been brought about by Petra's hubris. Kids, let's write something on Subaru's bandages. Write, a token of sympathy. Petra stiffened, and Lucas and the others turned the covers over and looked at the bandages on Subaru's leg. They wrote their own words on the bandages, showing some consideration and keeping their voices low. And then, Mina shyly wrote a note of thanks. Mina, Petra. The last in line was Petra, and Mina, holding the quill, tilted her head. Finally, everyone else noticed Petra's condition, and she could not accept the pen. Her knees were shaking, and Petra could not look directly at Subaru. Kids, Petra? What's wrong? Are you okay? Lucas and the others tilted their heads at Petra's strange behavior. As they looked at her, It reminded Petra of the forest. When they had entered the forest, Lucas and the others had looked to Petra. At that time, Petra had summoned up what little courage she had left, but, Petra, today, I can't do it. Stifling a sob in the back of her throat, Petra covered her face and ran out of the room. The maid in the hallway narrowed her eyes at Petra as she ran, but she didn't follow her, as if she knew straight away that Petra would head for the front door and run back to the village. In fact, that was what happened. Petra ran away. She ran home, barged into her room, winced at the sound of her startled parents' voices, and just continued to shake with fear. For the first time, Petra became aware of her responsibility for her own actions. Petra, it's all my fault. I did an awful thing. It was late that night when Petra tearfully told her parents about it. Petra knew that Lucas and his friends had come to visit her because they were worried about her running away from the mansion. Petra's parents were worried about their beloved daughter and kept calling out to her in her room. She despised it all, pretended not to hear it, and locked herself away. But she couldn't bear the ever-growing guilt, so she stumbled into her parents' bedroom in tears. Petra's parents were very surprised at first when they heard Petra's story. She told them about Meili, the puppy, her request to Subaru, and the serious injuries he received. Petra told them that everything was her fault. Petra sobbed, wondering what she should do. Mother, it's okay, sure, you did some bad things, Petra. Petra's mother put her daughter in the same bed and stroked her head as she spoke. Her father crawled in next to her, and Petra sniffled as she was sandwiched between them. Mother, if you do something wrong, you need to apologize. Put your heart into it, and do your best. Petra, but even if I apologize, there's no way they will forgive me. Mother, do you apologize because you want forgiveness? Or do you apologize because you want to? Which is it, Petra? Petra felt like she was being told something very important, and she fell silent. Isn't the purpose of an apology to ask for forgiveness? At least, up until now, Petra had used an apology as a tool for that purpose. Even though she felt bad and said she was sorry, she used an apology as a means to ultimately be forgiven. Was there meaning in an apology for something that could not be forgiven? Father, make sure you go tell Subaru Summer that you're good and sorry. If you're afraid to go alone, your mother and I will go with you. But, you are the one who has to apologize, Petra. Petra's body was hugged tightly, and she rubbed her forehead against her father's chest. Thinking about it, it was probably the first time since she could remember that she had truly indulged her mother and father in this way. Even in front of her parents, Petra had always hidden her true feelings. So now, when she apologized to Subaru, she really wanted them to be there for her. But, Petra, no, I can apologize properly, all by myself, Petra said, thinking that she did not deserve to be pampered.
Re-Zero, Side Story, The World Petra Saw Part 5.
It was 2 days later that Subaru, who had woken up safely, came to the village to greet everyone. Subaru, well, it was dangerous, very dangerous. What? I'm glad everyone's okay. Subaru gave a thumbs up. Although he was not dressed in his usual mansion uniform, it was a funny-looking black and white outfit that Petra had never seen before. However, Petra judged objectively that he was dressed much better than he would have been if he had been in more formal clothes. Kids, Subaru, feeling better, Subaru is standing on the ground. Subaru, oh, you little brats. I'm glad you're all doing well. You should show me some gratitude. With an embarrassed look on his face to the grateful adults, but with his usual attitude to the children, Subaru proudly talked about his achievements. Both Petra and the adults somehow knew that this was a way to keep the people around him from worrying. It was frustrating for Petra to notice that he was like that. What Subaru had done for the village and for Petra and the others was huge, but why? Kids, Subaru, let's play, let's catch some crawfish, a big one. On the other hand, Lucas and the others were oblivious to Subaru's condition and tried to pull him along in the same manner as they did before. When Petra saw Lucas reaching out to climb up, Petra, Lucas, what are you thinking? Subaru's only just recovered. Lucas, you are, without thinking, in a loud voice, Petra scolded him, and a startled Lucas landed on his buttocks on the spot. The loud voice caused everyone to turn around at once and noticed Petra, who was far from the circle. Subaru, too, raised his hand to Petra. Subaru, oh, Petra. Why are you over there? Petra, HK, Subaru, what is it? The moment he spoke to her in a friendly manner, Petra turned away and ran. There was Subaru's surprised voice, but Petra couldn't stop herself. Although she had decided that she would apologize, she did not. This was just like at the mansion. Petra, huff. In the end, Petra ran straight to the other side of the village. Bending her knees and taking several deep breaths, she looked around and saw that she was on the outskirts of the village, the same place where she had met Meili and the puppy. Petra, everything? ? This is where things got a little messy. This time, without exaggeration, Petra was so surprised that she thought her heart would stop beating. When she turned around, Petra saw Subaru standing slightly behind her. Subaru exaggeratedly raised and lowered his shoulders as he staggered and leaned against the tree trunk where a magic stone hung. Subaru, but I am too injured to run as fast as I can. Huff, I don't know if it's okay to be out sick. If you're injured, but not sick. Petra, why? Subaru, as I thought, I can't catch my breath fast enough. Or, maybe I just have too little stamina. Chuckling, he sat down there. Petra was simply bewildered, not knowing the true meaning of this. Gesturing to Petra, Subaru tapped his hand on the ground next to him. Subaru, well, sit down, Petra. Let's have a little talk. Petra, okay. When asked, Petra didn't have the courage to refuse. Petra sat down next to Subaru. Petra looked over and glanced at him, stealing looks at his profile. He did not look angry. But he had every right to be. Subaru, I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but everyone told me to go after you, Petra. Is there something you want to tell me? Petra, oh. Well, that's true. Apparently, this situation was orchestrated by those around her in order to make Petra apologize. In other words, the whole village was helping Petra to redeem herself. Lucas, Mild, Kane, Dine, and even Mina were all trying to get Petra to apologize. If Subaru was set up like this, he would be able to blame Petra without hesitation. Subaru, I wonder what about? Maybe, did you get hurt before I brought you out of the forest? You might have gotten mercilessly bitten into by those dogs, and if that left a scar, then, I'm sorry. Petra, oh, what? Subaru, the worst thing that can happen to a girl is getting a scar. Well, if I recall, to prevent scars, you gotta keep it moist or something like that. Subaru, whose face had turned pale, became blatantly anxious that he might have hurt Petra. Petra was often taken aback by his wisdom, and wondered if it was a ploy to stir up Petra's guilt. She soon realized that it was not intended to do so at all. Petra, the boy in front of Petra really didn't think that she had done anything wrong. Rather, he felt bad about what he had done to Petra, and that was all he could think about. That misconception, that misunderstanding, on the contrary, angered Petra. Petra, Subaru, that's right. Petra, show me where you got hurt. Oh, no, I don't want to see it if it's in a weird place. Petra, Subaru, yes, what's wrong? Turning around, Subaru finally looked up and made eye contact with Petra, who had shouted loudly. Petra's eyes were moist with large tears, and his unusual black eyes widened as he looked at Petra. Petra's emotions were racing, and she wanted to scream. But anger was not what she should have been voicing right now. Petra, saw. Subaru, saw. Petra, I'm sorry. As soon as Petra finished, tears began to flow down her cheeks. Subaru became more and more panicked at the sight, but Petra left her emotional breakdown to herself and just kept on going. Subaru, Petra. What's wrong? Why are you apologizing? Petra, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. In front of the panicked Subaru, Petra just continued to cry and apologize. Petra, like I said, everything is my fault. Confessing her sins, Petra kept her gaze down to the ground and clenched her hand tightly. The tears were still running down her cheeks, but Petra managed to calm down enough to talk. As it was, Petra faltered and confided in Subaru about her sins, just as she had told to her parents. She felt that everything was her fault: Meili, the puppy, the request to Subaru, and the serious injuries. Subaru. After listening to the confession of her sins, Subaru quieted down with a difficult look on his face. When she closed her eyes, the image of Subaru lying on the bed came back to her mind behind Petra's eyelids. The way he was gasping for air after following her this far was also fresh in her mind. The real Subaru, right next to her, with his sleeves rolled up, had many white scars on his arms. They were scars that would never go away. Just as Subaru was worried about Petra earlier. Subaru, you know, Petra, yes. When Subaru called her name, Petra gnashed her back teeth, knowing that the time had finally come. What would he say? How would she be rebuked? Petra, who had always been forgiven for every problem, had no idea how scary it was to not be forgiven. So, when she looked up and saw Subaru's troubled grimace, Petra forgot to breathe. It was not the kind of face one would give to someone that they would never forgive. Subaru, not that it's your fault, Petra. You're wrong. If you have apologized. It's not. Petra, Subaru, maybe this is it. Petra was upset as Subaru tilted his head and chose his words. Noticing Petra's turmoil, Subaru nodded to Petra, his expression becoming one of understanding. Subaru, I forgive you. Petra, Subaru, well, it's true that you made a lot of mistakes, Petra. I felt it would be different if I irresponsibly just said there's nothing to be sorry for. And so, when I think about what the best thing to say to this tearful, remorseful Petra would be, Petra, Subaru, I forgive you, Petra. Don't worry. I'm not angry. I'm just glad that you and Mina don't have any scars. But not me and Lucas. A man's scars are his badge of honor. Subaru then laughed with a face that was completely devoid of any sense of anger. The look on Subaru's face was the same as when Petra had first taken a liking to him. Petra, fewer, Petra cried out, experiencing another breakdown, a shock quite different from the one she had experienced before.
Re-Zero, Side Story, The World Petra Saw Part 6.
That night, Petra was in bed in her room, alone with just her thoughts. Why was Subaru not angry? Why was I forgiven? Petra, I am, not because she was cute. Petra had already learned more than enough to know that there were some things that could not be helped by that. So, that was not the reason for why Subaru forgave her. Sweet. Gullible. Simplistic, such was Petra's assessment of the adults and children she had used her cuteness as a weapon to toy with them in the past. It was none of those things. If cuteness was not a weapon, then Petra shouldn't be allowed to use it. Petra, be kind, because, kind, as soon as that word came to mind, a sudden understanding dawned on Petra. The reason for why Subaru forgave Petra was probably because Subaru was kind. The reason for why Subaru went into the forest to save Petra and the others, worked hard, did not complain when he was injured, came to show his face to the worried villagers, and patted the head of the crying Petra was all because he was kind. Petra, Immediately, Petra realized that she had been living her life in a very misguided way. Petra thought it was because of her cuteness that the adults allowed her to play pranks, to take food, and to skip work. That was wrong. What a misunderstanding. What a stupid misunderstanding. Those things were allowed to happen because everyone had been kind. The reason for why Petra was overlooked was because she was spoiled by the kindness of the people who let Petra off with no proper self-reflection, no awareness of her own wrongdoings, or no vow to not do the same thing again. Petra's life had always consisted of indulging in someone else's kindness. At last, Petra realized this. It was thanks to the greatest act of kindness ever that she finally realized it. Oh, Petra. You're all dressed up today. The next day, Subaru met her in the village square and smiled at Petra's appearance. He never mentioned anything about yesterday's tears. Petra thought that this was also Subaru's kindness. She wanted to indulge in his kindness. That's why Petra didn't mention yesterday's tears, either. Instead, she picked up the hem of her skirt and twirled around adorably on the spot. Petra, hair. Right? Isn't it cute? Isn't it cute? Subaru, oh, you look super cute. Where did you get that outfit, Petra? You know. This is. I didn't actually buy it. I made it, Subaru, you made it? Oh, I see. Oh, right. Petra, that's awesome, tilting her head slightly at Subaru's reaction, which alternated between understanding, surprise, and satisfaction. Petra felt better about his honest response and puffed out her chest, her cheeks reddening. Petra's outfit today was a lovely and gorgeous dress, as she had told Subaru. Petra finished it from scratch herself. 2 years ago, Petra dreamed of a treasure, and she worked hard to create it using that woven fabric. And, on this day, she showed it to the world for the very first time. Subaru, Petra, as expected, you have good taste. I'm sure you could open a store in the future. Petra, really, you think so? Subaru, The high spirits that Petra had been feeling up to that point suddenly faded away at Subaru's words. Petra's voice was not cheerful, and Subaru looked a little confused. However, Petra was afraid of what he just said. It wasn't the first time Petra had told people that she wanted to work as a tailor in the future, but the responses were always in jest, and no one took her seriously. The adults laughed at her, and her friends didn't believe in her Petra's dream. What would Subaru think about that? Such feelings swelled up rapidly in Petra. Petra, you know, in the future, I want to go to the royal capital to work as a tailor. Subaru, Petra, this dress is practice for that. It's only one dress, but I'll practice more, and then, stuttering and speaking a little too fast, Petra spoke of her dream, not in the usual joking way, but in a wishful one, to someone who needed to hear it. Upon hearing Petra's dream, Subaru, that's a nice dream. I bet you will become the best tailor in the royal capital. Petra, Subaru, who usually would answer with a laugh, did not laugh at Petra's dream. With a serious face and voice, Subaru patted the anxious Petra on the head and supported her dream. Subaru did not laugh at the dream that everyone else laughed at. Petra, why is this person so kind? With that thought, Petra's cheeks unconsciously reddened as she looked at Subaru with her big round eyes. That face that only Subaru saw was the cutest Petra had ever shown. At 12 years old, Petra Latte had a dream. No, it's not necessarily about being a top-notch tailor and opening the best store in the royal capital. Petra, I love to make clothes. That's never going to change, but, as she gazed at the finished treasured dress, Petra thought back to the day when she first had her dream. That day, Petra had been dazzled by the colorful woven fabric and dreamed of going to the royal capital. But now, Petra knew the true meaning of that inspiration. At that time, Petra was not moved by the beautiful textiles. She was fascinated by something that did not exist in her own little world, by the impact of the totally new and unknown. Petra mistakenly believed that she was the center of the world, based on the reasoning that she was cute and such. Petra had been protected until now by so much great kindness. Learning this, Petra's world was once again knocked out by a shock that was as great as the colors she had seen back then. That was why, Petra, Lucas is the heir to his lumberjack father. Mild is going to be a cook and revive the village tavern. Diane and Kane are. Yeah, there's no point in asking. Yes. While Petra was gathering with her friends and talking about the future in their usual way, the brothers Diane and Kane started fighting again. The topic of discussion was, of course, Petra's future husband, Mina. So, Petra, do you still want to go to the royal capital? Perhaps it was because Mina had recently come to realize that she was going to be a big sister, but she no longer seemed as lonely as before. In response to this question, Petra's cheeks turned red. Petra, let's see. It might be a little different now. Mina, is that so? Then, what do you want to be in the future? When Mina asked this, Petra stuck her tongue out at her. With a smile so cute that one could not help but admire it. Petra, in the future, I want to be the wife of a kind husband.